All right, this is round 2 with the Candidate Liberty Chat, trying to talk to Marc Ives. He is running with the DFL in the primary against Angie Craig in Congressional District 2 for Minnesota House. There's U.S. House. Anyways, so we have our regular podcast, and then we were like, well, we'll just, talk to candidates, have a little bit of a different swing on this. I mean, we have the podcast available to us. We might as well utilize it the best we can, especially during election season. And the primaries are coming up. So we have an opportunity to speak to some people from different parties. And you'll notice I said DFL, not the Libertarian Party, because it's good to have a different perspective of people who are around you, that can really challenge your thoughts. And that's not a bad thing, like having your thoughts, having your ideas challenged. So I am Rebecca Whiting. I guess I didn't say that yet. And we have TJ Hawthorne and Marc Ives with us. And we are sponsored by the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. And if you're interested in finding out more information about the Libertarian Party of Minnesota, it's lpmn.org. So we had a plan a few days ago, and the internet was just like blowing up every time we tried to connect. So we're doing this again. Marc, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you came from, what you're doing now, and really what compelled you to run against, like somebody like Angie Craig.
Yeah. Primary challengers who challenge an incumbent historically win at a little under 2%, right? So this is a long shot campaign.
You know who you're talking to, right?
That encouraged me to run.
Sorry.
And I guess, yeah, of course, 2% win rate, it's at least something. But I'm a teacher.
We're here. We're doing it.
Teachers, we have to plan, what we're going to do during the summer, especially when you're just starting out as a teacher. You're not quite paid enough to take 3 months off. So trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my summer. And I said, hey, Angie Craig, she's a representative. She supports these efforts. She's very pro-corporate. I want to support who's ever running against her. Because I'm seeing these pictures and images coming out of Gaza, and they're just, they're horrifying. So I look up the ballot. I go to see who's running against Angie. Is running against Angie in the Democratic primary. And I find this unbelievable because, some 80% of Democrats want a ceasefire in Gaza. So I'm like, well, if no one be running against her, I guess it has to be me. So I prayed for another candidate to come in, watching the deadline approach week after week after week. 2 days before the deadline hit, I said, okay, I guess it's got to be me, and I joined the race. And so, I don't have as much money as Angie Craig, but I have my summers off, and so I'm just doing everything I can, going to events, sending out messages, so that I can beat her, and the voters of our district will have a choice in November to vote for a pro-peace candidate. Because right now, if Angie wins, it's going to be her versus Joe Tyrab, and they're both, all in for endless war. So that's why I'm running against Angie. I want to give voters a choice, and I want that choice to be someone who represents peace and is against sort of corporate elites owning our government.
Right. So what kind of reception have you gotten from other Democrats?
From other Democrats? It depends on like the demographic I'm with. So I do a lot in the Muslim community, in like the South Metro area. We're talking like Burnsville, Rosemont, Apple Valley. And I get a huge reception there. And also there's a large pro-peace contingent. Veterans for Peace is an organization I've talked to a lot. There's peace groups in Hastings, Northfield, all around. And so these people were just like me. They were praying for someone to be running against Angie Craig. And I've gotten a tremendously great reception. Our Democratic Party, I think, Democratic voters have a tendency to be really hesitant about challenging incumbents. Like they're very afraid of discord within the party, and so there's quite a few people who are like, oh, we don't really want you to weaken Angie's position. Like, we agree with you on principle, but we don't know if we can throw our weight behind you. And, I am not someone who's terribly concerned. Yeah, about uniformity. Like, I think democracy is messy and it should have discourse and there should be conflicting opinions, and you should always have an option. A vote that has one candidate on the ballot is a travesty. I mean, it is a travesty, and it does not say positive things about the state of our democracy if you have one candidate on the ballot, which is what we were going to have. So, overall positive. Some people hesitant. I'm not meeting a lot of super pro Angie supporters. I think it's going to be battle of name recognition.
Did you attend the? Was there a Minnesota DFL convention? I guess there must have been, right?
Yeah, the DFL convention. It happened. It happened before the deadline for getting on the ballot. So Angie Craig got all this money from the DFL, and they endorsed her and did all this stuff for her before the ballot was even finalized, which I thought was odd. But yeah, I did not attend the DFL convention because I really didn't intend on winning or on running until a month before the ballot closed, because it had in April when I was looking forward to what I was going to do in the summer.
Before you could file, which was June 4th, right? Was that the same day that we filed? Was the last day to file? So that's I'm just trying to put it in perspective.
I filed, I think, on June 3rd.
And I'm just curious.
So
I guess
I had the idea to run. Oh, yo.
I think you Megan. No, sorry. Well, keep going, because that's where I was asking. Where did this come about, and where in the party, and why did you choose the Democrat Party? I guess you must have been a long time Democrat, right? And following along with their politics, but then jumping into be a politician is something I've just experienced for myself the last couple of years as well. But the party that I am part of is much smaller, and it's the convention and the support is limited. I just feel like if you had the DFL, you get in there and you start talking that stuff in their convention, you know what I mean? And I think you're right. I do think that folks would morally agree with you and have a hard time. And then at the convention is where you could garner that support. Don't get me wrong. You're doing it. We're going to get in the primary and you're hopefully catch a lot of votes, right? And just like you said, there's a choice. We need to have choice. And it really does amaze me sometimes to see the Democrat Party be so undemocratic on all different levels everywhere. So I'm very glad, Mark, that you're jumping in this and doing this. So, okay, continue on. Where was your path and how, you said you're a teacher and obviously the genocide in Gaza was the spark that really lit the fire in your ass.
Yeah, I mean, I followed politics for a while. I vote in every election. I marched in some of the pro-Palestine protests, but I really had no intention of being a politician. But I just think that this, this violence happening in Gaza, I just don't see it as a political issue. I just think it's a moral issue. I don't think kids should ever be killed. I think if you're ever saying the sentence like kids shouldn't be killed, but I think you're in a bad spot. I was so it was very spontaneous. I mean, it was just this realization she didn't have an opponent. She's supporting this endless warfare. Somebody's got to do something, and so I threw myself in the ring. I think if I was politically minded from like the beginning of the year, yeah, declaring earlier would have given me a better shot at victory for sure. But I just didn't know. I didn't know that this is something I wanted to until like right before. Because unlike Angie Craig,
well, we get every 2 years
not running. Yeah, unlike Angie Craig, I'm not running for the purpose of like advancing my political career. I'm running because I wanna end a genocide, and so it just sort of happened. I wish I did earlier, but to answer your sort of second part of your question, why the Democratic Party? So I think you guys and me have a very similar goal in that we believe the government is not responsive to the will of the people. Two-party system has sort of hijacked the government in a way that makes it so that our politicians do not listen to what people actually want. They're only responsive to their donors. But we are going about breaking that in two different ways. You guys are challenging it from the outside as a third party. And I think I think that's a great strategy. I think there's a lot to that strategy. I am going about it in a different way. My vision is I would like to see a wave of working class people rise across the country to try to take back the Democratic Party by primarying every single Democratic candidate who takes corporate money. I think money in this country should only be raised from working class people and not from businesses or special interests or any of that. Super PACs, whatever. Money should be raised by working class people. And so I want to see people take back the Democratic Party because I have a lot of affection for the Democratic Party of the 1930s and 40s and 50s, a party that provided services and ways to improve people's lives, that advanced things like civil rights, and that really did things for regular people. And it just hasn't been that party in about half a century at this point. And I'm sure we have very different views on the New Deal. But from my perspective, I think that a lot of the programs the Democratic Party fought for in the middle of the 20th century really improved the quality of life for regular Joes. And that's what I want to see a return to, but that requires primarying out every single corrupt member of the Democratic Party. So if that's my belief, I have to be the front of the spear, and I want to do that here.
Yeah, I can't even remember where I had this conversation with, that somebody was like, said that the Libertarian Party took Koch brothers money. And I was like, not in Minnesota. I mean, I can't speak for other states, but like, we don't. I mean, maybe if we had the extra cash, that would be handy. But then again, that extra cash always comes with strings, so at some point you have to, go back to, and it's really hard, right? Like we could be doing a lot more if we would be compromising. But there are certain things that I don't see us being able to compromise on simply because the compromising is what has gotten us into this mess in the first place, right?
The worst,
we don't.
The worst shit is when it's reach across the aisle. The worst stuff is when it's bipartisan. Is when we're spending the most money. And
and the war.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Where the left and the right unanimously agree on, we should be fighting here, or we should be sending troops here, or we should be funding this here, that's when you know that everything is just lost. They all agree. So, I mean, the perfect example of that in the past that we have an actual conclusion to is like Iraq. Everybody agreed. I think there was only like 2 dissenting voices, maybe just one. Is it somebody in the chat? Fact check me. Was it Barbara Boxer? Was the only? There was somebody. There was one person.
Oh, in our Congress
during the Iraq invasion, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was there was, I forgot her name too, but oh, maybe he's grabbing.
Yeah, I don't remember, and I mean, I can go on Google and check it out right now, but I'm not.
I mean, we had some people dissent in the Congress. Bernie was a dissenter. I don't know how you feel about him, but that's he's an independent, and he's someone I personally admire, but he dissented during the Iraq War. But you are 100% right in. Angie Craig brags about how she has one of the highest rates of Democrats that work with Republicans. And I don't know why you're bragging about this. The Democratic Party only works with the Republican Party for the worst things in America. It's crazy when they get together to be like, oh, the one thing everybody can agree on, endless warfare. I mean, like Americans.
Oh, okay. That was totally wrong.
If you poll them, do you want to go to war with any given country? It would be like a 9. It's crazy.
Well, until you fix the narrative and control the censorship on the internet, like the Fed boys are doing to us now. I don't know if that's, am I froze up?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. So once you control the narrative and you have all the media and everything censored so that this is what everyone believes, that there were weapons of mass destruction and that there are I guess I don't even know how to, that Russia was unprovoked and Gaza, October 7th was just not allowed to just happen and take, and do all this stuff to provoke all these things. And when history begins on this one date, but then the narrative continues on this way. And the way the news cycle happens, that's just what happens. I mean, just a few weeks ago, Trump was dang near assassinated. And it's you can't even Google it anymore or right now. That's how they're controlling the narrative and all the different shit that we see, that we consume. I'm surprised that I've said a few things on this show live and it hasn't really affected too many things, but
They haven't caught on yet.
Huh?
They haven't caught on yet.
Right. And I think that's just it. We don't have a big enough audience for them to give a shit. But there are folks that I have listened to that had said very minor things that are just repeating other things in the news, and they get shut down, demonetized, or even canceled on YouTube, and you can't even find them anymore. So this kind of censorship makes folks believe one way because they don't ever get to hear what you hear unless you actually listen to guys like Scott Horton. And I mean, have you heard of Scott Horton before? Mark?
I've not heard of Scott Horton.
So
you should read Scott Horton then.
Yes, if you're anti-war and you want to really learn, because there's receipts, and he writes books that are half footnotes. The half of it is the dang links to all the receipts that he's gotten, all the quotes and URLs to videos that you watch these people say what they said right out in the open. And the way they control this shit is unreal. And so I empathize, sympathize, I don't even know which word it is, with folks that aren't woke in the real sense of the term, that are really in the dark and blue-pilled so bad that they believe that this steak is delicious when they have no idea that it's just a bunch of ones and zeros that they're consuming. and it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's my
Well,
little.
let's talk about the war in Gaza a little bit, because obviously what happened to Israel was also horrible. Like, I don't want to see anybody die, you know. And what happened to them? They were attacked. You know, people suffered. A lot of people died. People were taken captive. But then Israel has this response in Gaza. And this is like people that don't know. And so, well, I guess let me go back a second. I'm an Iraq war veteran. I was a medic during the Iraq war, but I had 2 deployments. And the 2 deployments I was at were in Ramadi, Iraq, and Baghdad, Iraq, which early in the war, which when I was there, were 2 very key points of the war. A lot of activity, a lot of destruction. There was just a lot. So like, I know when I'm talking about like warfare in a densely populated area, like I can see what that actually looks like on the ground. You know, like for me, like talking about it, it brings back things, right? And so when you're talking about the Gaza Strip is 6 miles wide and 20 miles long. And I think it was like 1.6 million. There was over 1 million, but less than 2 million people in Gaza. In that little bitty like space, right? They're already living on top of each other. And now, as a response to what happened in October to Israel, they are literally being carpet bombed. Now, Israel's defense of what they're doing is saying that they're just trying to get the members of Hamas. And Hamas does have a network in Gaza. That's true. But if you're going to fight a moral war, shouldn't you act morally? Really, that's what it comes down to for me. If you're going to say that you're responding in defense of your people because people shouldn't live, you know, on the fear of their lives and shouldn't have been threatened and shouldn't have been killed. Obviously, I agree with all of that. But if you're going to attack based on a greater standard of morality, shouldn't you exercise that to the people that you're attacking? That's to me, that's what this comes down to. And I don't think they are. I don't think that just bombing indiscriminately a densely populated area shows any moral regard for the people that are living there. A population that already has a very low median age. You don't grow old in Gaza. There's no resources. There's no like there's an ocean on one side or a sea on one side. There's Israel on the other, and there's a little tiny like choke point basically to leave if they could out of Egypt, and the Egyptians won't allow it. So where are those people in Gaza who don't want Hamas to be their government? And I can empathize with that too. I don't want the current United States government in the United States. But
that was one of the things. That was one of the things right away when right after October 7th, and the response was just F Gaza, and it's like
because of their government.
What about they elected their government in 2016, and it's like
but so did we. We also elected Bush.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't want to be represented.
Does that mean that we deserve to have to be executed, essentially genocide in our lives also, just because that
all the shit that our government has done over our parents' lives, all of its lies, and we dominated this whole earth because of a bunch of lies, and we killed all kinds of people around the world. They have all the reason to hate us according to that logic.
So in the meantime,
and I think
thousands
it's
people have died in Gaza as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I think it's an especially disgusting argument to start opening up the can of worms of, oh, well, your government is evil, so it's okay to kill limitless amounts of civilians, because that argument justifies what happened on October 7th. And I think it's unjustifiable. Right? I don't think any innocent people should die. And that very argument is the thing that allows for the terrorist attacks to happen. And so Israel had a moment to take a moral stance and say, like, that's how Hamas persecutes their war, but that's not how we are going to execute it. That's not how we are going to conduct war against them. But they did not choose that path. They're doing the same thing, the exact same thing.
Way worse.
And we know it's not about freeing the hostages because worse. And we know it's not about freeing the hostages because they have freed 5 hostages through military action. And they have freed over 100 hostages through temporary ceasefire deals. And so if you, that is how it is through making a deal, but their main motivation is not freeing these hostages. Their main motivation is killing as many Palestinians as possible so that one day Israel can take back the Gaza Strip. And I really think
Israel's never been
we're going to look back on it as the tragedy of our time.
So for a couple of things that
I'm done.
There's a little bit of a lag, so I'm interrupting, and then I'm like, blah, and then anyways, sorry. So I'm a traditional, fundamental, biblical Christian. That's who I am, right? I teach Old Testament history every Sunday morning when I'm not out doing libertarian stuff. Additionally, I'm at church and I teach kids Old Testament history, and it shocks me as I go through this, especially when it's applicable and what's going on in Israel and the Middle East and Gaza and all those. Israel never had control of Gaza historically in ancient history. Never. That was never theirs. It was a group of people called the Philistines. The Philistines. Ancient Israel, the Philistines controlled Gaza Strip. So this argument, so I've heard this too, that, well, it's their land, they should get it back, it's their ancient land. It was never theirs. Not once. Never. They never gained control of Gaza. And Gaza has existed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. There is a actual record of Gaza existing for close to 4,000 years. That is an old ancient city, and Israel has never been in control of it. So just that is aside. Now, second, I have listened to speeches from Netanyahu, and I find him to be a disgusting human being. I've actually heard him say that they believe that they have the righteous authority to kill every single person in Gaza, given to them by God. That's what they believe. They're not interested in compromising. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for annihilation. Now, so you have to understand what the conflict, why this won't have a solution, right? This isn't, or maybe it can, but not with Netanyahu and that mindset.
Oh, right.
That's the mindset you got to fight, is that they believe that they have a righteous and, what's the word? Prophetic. They have a prophetic right to that land.
A divine authority.
Yes. And how do you can't fight that with an army. Netanyahu addressed Congress last week. So it must have been Friday, because we tried to have this, interview last Saturday, and I think that the Netanyahu had addressed them on Friday. And I tried watching it. It was almost an hour long. Half of that was most of Congress standing up and applauding, like standing ovation. Netanyahu would say something. It was inconsequential, and they would stand up and applaud, and it would die down, and he'd speak for about another 5 seconds, and they'd stand up and they'd applaud again. At what point do we have to recognize in the United States that the politicians aren't serving us, that their interests are serving Israel, and as a result, the people in Gaza are going to pay that price? We are literally selling them the missiles and the bombs that they are dropping in Gaza.
Zelensky got the same kind of response. Yeah, Zelensky got the same kind of response with all the Ukraine flags and stuff flying around in Congress when he came to speak as well. That it's those AIPAC and those super PACs and things that you're talking about, funds all those campaigns and says, okay, here's your lockstep orders and this is what you vote for and here's the bills you're going to produce. And it is just like you said, they're not working for our interests.
No. And the most disgusting part of that whole speech that Netanyahu gave was him lecturing people on the sanctity of life. He doesn't see the people in Gaza as human.
No.
He sees them as animals.
Well,
animals need to be put down.
They use that excuse that the savages and the terrorists do the same thing. They don't regard us as humans either, chopping off heads with those extremists make it really hard to talk about any kind of peace, right? And they're always saying, well, if Israel dropped their arms right now, what would happen? They would Hamas wouldn't stop till every Jew is dead. And then, Hamas would probably say the same damn thing about Israel. It's not, it's a very interesting thing, but what is important is who really does have the power in that is Israel because they've got us. I always picture Israel as like Scrappy Doo and Scooby Doo, the little freaking dog that wants to fight everybody. And they're holding them back all the time. Like, hey, settle the F down, cut it out. Well, you don't even know what you're getting into. Because there's no logical conclusion. If they do wipe out everybody and every Palestinian, if they wipe them out, what's next? All the other Arab countries around are going to be like, what the F? Which they already are. I'm sure they're already like, what the F is going on? And somebody really needs to step in and say, whoa. And then or America needs to step back and say, do what you will, I guess. But that's obviously going to create quite a shitstorm.
Well, we could start by
I was having
absolutely.
I did this like online like question and answer thing on Reddit, and it was incredible by the amount of people who did not understand a very simple solution. Like most people were talking about this problem like, oh, it's unsolvable. There's no way to solve this problem. And I was saying, if you turn off the infinite money faucet to Israel will stop the fight because Hamas has routinely agreed to these peace. They're in terrible shape. They cannot launch another October 7th right now, if like on a practical level, and then they agree to these peace deals. And the reason they're denied is because Israel says, oh, we would agree to the peace deal too. But the only thing we want in the peace deal is that it's not a permanent peace. So they're like, well, we want to agree to a peace deal where we can keep fighting. Because they know there's no consequences to their actions. It's not their money. And when Hezbollah or Iran or whoever gets involved in the fighting, they know, well, Big Brother America is going to come in, and then we're involved. And the criminal underreported media that the United States Navy is currently receiving and giving fire between Yemen Like, our service members
Yeah.
are intaking fire and delivering fire. Our soldiers in the Army have been in other countries. And right now, the amount of conflict
shouldn't be
between
there.
Israel and Hezbollah, I'm telling you, if Israel gets their war with Hezbollah, they're all at war, and they send troops into Lebanon, I am telling you, mark it here on the Libertarian podcast, we will send soldiers to fight with them, because the Republican Party 100% agrees
Oh yeah.
to do it.
Oh,
And like,
they're waiting. They're waiting.
half of the Democratic Party is crazy. It's bananas.
Goes right back to the narrative.
Not all the Republicans. Thomas Massey does not.
Oh yeah, not.
Yeah, there's
there
one.
Are
There's one.
very small.
There's a couple. Yeah, but you give credit where credit.
And some of the most leftist Democrats in the House, I would agree with. So that's the thing is, I believe you really have to understand the motivations, and it's the dollar, really, and we have to keep the dollar moving in the way that traditionally has, and all these boomers are losing control of that effing dollar. And so I don't really know. Like I said, I don't see any logical conclusion, but the narrative seems to really be going that hard. Let's really start hating Iran again. Let's really start hating Iran. Get the narrative. Just like it took a few years for everybody to hate Iraq. It wasn't until 2003 that we invaded Iraq. So it was a couple years that they grew that narrative and grew that sentiment, that hate of one country. And that's what's happening again with Iran. And
don't forget, Israel has already bombed Iran. That happened too.
Yeah, it was all on the internet too. It was kind of like, oh, tit for tat, and we're going to respond in this kind and then this. And it's like, well, that's dumb. I mean, why can't you respond with letters across the table and talk?
It's a chain of escalation. It's a chain of escalation that leads us down an incredibly dark road. We have already had, I believe, 2 Navy members of the Navy who drowned doing maneuvers on fire. But they were doing maneuvers that they wouldn't have had to do if they were not in the Gulf doing these operations. That alone, I think, should be disqualifying of every politician who supports this war. Losing a single American life over this conflict, this morally corrupt conflict, is a travesty. And by the way, like, what does America? I mean, it's not like they're our number one trading partner. It's not like Canada is being attacked, right? I mean, it is crazy. It is underreported how insane this is and how normalized it has become in American political discourse.
Yeah,
so
I
we
agree.
have Minnesota National Guard soldiers in Gaza right now.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to ask you, Mark, and your sentiment or your belief, and should we have American aircraft carriers or even ships in the Arabian, Persian Gulf, whichever side you want to take and whatever you want to call it, but to protect these shipping lanes and things like that folks are trying to say are at risk because the Houthis are shooting down, so the Navy's got to, control the shipping lanes. It's like, or we could just get out of there. And we have National Guard members, like Rebecca just said, and then we had Arizona National Guard members killed in Jordan. At least that's what they said. They were killed in Jordan. I don't know. I've heard that they were operating in Syria. And, regardless, we should just be there. We should not have any of our hands and toes anywhere on the ground in any of those areas. Whatever the case, I just don't see it in any American interest. Like,
the greatest threat to the world peace is agencies like the CIA, like Mossad. That's why Mossad is Israel's spy network, right? They're the second largest spy agency in the world for a tiny little country like
I just heard
Israel.
today. So we know. Have you guys been paying attention to what's going on in Venezuela? They just had an election that's highly contested, and the opposition seems, they're 50-50. This half doesn't believe they won, whatnot. Well, I just heard the news that the poll, like there was an exit poll done, and this was the motivator that says exit polling says that the opposition won, and the tally polling says that Macron won. I forgot the opposition party person's name, but then the news came out that I just heard today that poll was done by, and the name I've heard before, but it is a CIA operative. It is an organization out of the CIA. So they're totally doing a color revolution right there in Venezuela as we speak. And this is just constant shit that America does. And I'm not even exactly sure the motivation for America. It has to do with our dollar is about to fail, and we're in for some shit in America because of the dollar. And so I feel like there must be some other motives to ignite this kind of stuff more over in the world. But I don't see any.
Mark, you'll find that libertarians are very much into like talking about things like the economy. So
well, it all stems from everybody said it since they were growing up. Money makes the world go round. Well, in so many levels, that is exactly true. It's just once you really learn in how the dollar and currency money really works, then you have different perspectives on that same cliche.
Yeah, currently it's not the dollar, it's the centralized banks that control the dollar, that control the Fed, that control the special interests in the Congress, that control the White House, that control the countries, England, France, Europe, all of Europe, Israel. Like this is the hands of who does these things are in all of these areas. And so they're like pulling the strings with absolutely no risk to themselves. Like I can't imagine living a life of such one that I am just so absolutely filthy rich that I don't have to worry about money at all.
I can't imagine living a life being approached by somebody that says, I'll give you this if you be this person.
Yeah. I mean,
that would be.
But that's what we have. That's who controls Congress. And that's why once you get into Congress, your bankroll just keeps going up. It's not because we're paying them that much. It's because of the money that's running into Washington that's being shoved underneath the table telling them what to do. That's how all of this works.
Mark, and this is where I've heard and been so motivated by so many people that come into politics. It's spouting the same stuff that I'm spouting, that I'm trying to say, that I'm an honest person, that, hey, you can't buy me. I don't want money in politics and all this stuff. And then they win. And then they either get a tap on the back when they get in that room and says, this is the way it really works. And then they conform. And then same old shit, right? That's where the party thing, that's where I feel like if you really need to change this party, it is doing it in the Minnesota DFL, or you know what I'm saying, where you got to get on in the inside. Heck yeah, if you got elected and primaried Angie Craig out of that primary election and then go up against whatever Republican that they're putting up into that district, which I'm sure is just a paper candidate like it is in CD4. You know, I would love to run against Betty as well. I don't know how Mark is frozen up, but he hasn't moved. I'm not frozen. Am I, Rebecca?
No, you're not frozen.
Okay. Well, I hope you got to hear everything I was just saying. But I really do think we should switch it up regardless. And it'd be nice to see some challengers. Man, pose up and what a pose. I just heard that today that the company that conducted that poll, the exit poll, is exactly the same company that did some kind of. There he is.
There you go.
Can you hear us now?
You're back. Oh no! Now we can't hear you.
20 seconds.
Shoot.
My
Whoa.
connection was lagging
made
20
it.
seconds behind, so I had to reset. I think this slowly gets worse, so I think
it's
it
still
just needs to
lagging.
reset every now and then.
Telling you, it's the feds.
Oh, no.
They are on to us. They're just
Is it a huge
trying to
lag?
make us give up on our own.
Hey, it's not too bad
They're
right
throttling
now.
the internet connection.
Just now. They are, man.
Yeah.
I'm sold. I believe it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
so Mark, what you're saying you're going to events. What kind of events have you gone to so far?
Yeah, so
that is a lag.
I've gone to like Northfield, had a talk where a guy named Jeff Hauer was speaking, and he is a Israeli peace activist. So I go to talks like that. Juneteenth celebration. I go to mosques every Friday. I've been to Pride events. Really just places where I think a good amount of people there will be responsive to the message we're putting down. I wish I got ahead of the curve on that's a learning curve with campaigning. I wasn't aware you had to, but now I know. Yeah, but I go to everything I can. I mean, at least 2 or 3 times a week, I'm going somewhere to meet new people.
Right on. Yeah, 2 years ago, I ran for what I'm running for again this year. It's Minnesota House. And just like you said, that was the exact same words I used, learning curve, right? I jumped in feet first and didn't really know what I was doing, learned a lot of things as far as the election rules with the Secretary of State, whatnot, and there's that. Then, I have no idea what you two are dealing with, where it's actually a national seat where there must be some other rules involved, but then you realize, okay, you got this, and you're gonna get the results of whatever success. August 13th, isn't that the day? The primary is August 13th, and so you'll get to see those results that day and go from there. Right now you have a baseline here, and so hey, then you can say, I got 2 years now to actually develop and build some grassroots. These are all words that I've said, and I thought I was doing pretty well in the 2 years in between my campaigns. But it's a lot easier said than done. You really got to just get out and do the work and be around. And the level of districts between the three of us, right? I've got 40,000 people in my district. You've got probably 200,000-300,000. I don't know how much is in a congressional district.
700,000.
700,000, right? And so that would mean Rebecca's 4 million folks in Minnesota. I don't know.
700,000 times 8.
Yeah, that's what I was just kind of okay. So 5.5 million. So there's a lot different levels of the work there, right? And so I think the campaign strategies are obviously going to differ, but I think where if after
there
next
is
Tuesday,
a huge learning curve to it.
Oof.
You're good. Keep going.
Go ahead, Mark. Let it rip. I want to hear what you're putting together your website.
I was just saying, there's a huge learning curve to it, and I don't know. I have to guess that I'm not going to win this time. Only 2% of challengers do. So, in the likely scenario that I do win, I have no idea if I would run. I grew up and I still religious, and I believe in doing the right thing and self-sacrifice for the betterment of others. And so that is the part of me that is like compelling me to do this, that maybe in 2 or 4 years or held again, but man, is it an uphill climb against obstacle after obstacle. And like, I could not imagine doing this 2 or 3 or 4 times, whatever. So if I were to do it again, it would be me taking a shot that I'm like, I can win this time over this issue. I can order these people. Like, I mean, I just don't have this sort of shameless drive that most politicians do, where they are willing to do anything to get in there. Like, it takes a lot out of me. But the thing that just keeps pushing me is I'm like, somebody has to do this. Like, nothing to change if good people just sit back and we're like, oh, I know they're going to smear me. I know they're going to kick my ass. I know I'm going to waste my money and my time and whatever. And then just like, what? We just let the worst people in America world? Like, so, yeah, I don't know what my political future is if I lose. Something tells me that my own, stupid selflessness will push me today to do it again. This is just it's a draining experience.
Yeah, I agree. Because because I'm up in Bemidji, I've been making all these trips down the cities because that's where the bulk of the population is, right? Like, I'm going to an event. I'm going to the Rondo Block Party this coming weekend, and I'm actually sharing a booth with somebody from the GOP. Like, we're tag teaming this as an opportunity. I believe in working with people that, on common, having, things that you can agree on, right? Especially for something like standing against the wars, but it has been exhausting. When you're in a position like ours, what kind of an uphill battle it is. Like, you knew that when you started, you talk about like the self-sacrificing. That's something that's, I don't know, TJ, was the Navy like this? Because the Army was really big on driving and really trying to instill the trait of being self-sacrificial into soldiers. Was the Navy like that too? Yeah. So
I mean, yeah, depends on who your leaders are, I think, but definitely in boot camp, that's what you're
yeah. Well, the Army has like this Army core values, and part of that is self-sacrifice, right? So, but I think that also, like when you're talking about like that, there's certain people who will be more attracted. Not maybe not attracted is the right word. Like, it's already part of who we are, trying to give up our part of ourselves for the betterment of humanity. Like, I hear you, like, we talked a little bit before this started, right? About like your reasons for being in the DFL, and you want to see people succeed, and you want to see people thrive, and you want to see people prosper, right? Like, I agree. I want to see that too. I just, like, our methods on how we get there are different, so I have a different philosophy on how to help humanity prosper, because that's what I want to see. I just, the suffering, and this is why, like, being anti-war is just such a part of what this is because the suffering gets to me. Watching people suffer, it literally hurts. Like, I can't hear about what's happening in places like Gaza without feeling it. And I can't hear about, people struggling to make ends meet without feeling it. Like, and maybe it's a little easier because I'm in that same boat, and so like there's a connection there when you're fully integrated with those type of people that are also going through those things, right? So I'm not even sure where I was going with that, but just
Sounded
that,
great.
yeah, the similarities between us, the results of what we want to see are very much the same. I just have and TJ too, a different philosophy on how we achieve those goals. But it is for the betterment of humanity, and it is for the collective good. I know that's kind of like uh, a word that people are like, "Oh, you're just a leftist if you say collective." I know, but reality is that people are tribal. We are
When
tribal.
when I
It's part of who we are.
when I first got involved in this and tried to be a libertarian activist and run as a politician as well was when the Ukraine war started. And our Libertarian Party, their national party, put together an anti-war rally in Washington, D.C., and me and a couple other members traveled to D.C. to go to this rally. That's when I really realized that we caught a lot of flack from a lot of folks on different factions within our party that said, okay, you're making coalitions with communists, or you're making coalitions with these tankies or whatever, and all these different words that kept thrown out. I truly believe that we stop these wars, we really do cure a lot of this suffering that we see, even especially within our country and things like that. Where we bring these service members home and quit being bullies around the world, we could be a lot safer around the world. I mean, it just can't be a switch. I think it could be, but it really would be a culture shock to the whole world if you really eliminated the American military out of a lot of economies around the world. And, this goes back to the dollar thing that I was talking about. Go ahead.
If I had the chance to push that big red button that just like completely eliminated places like, or corporations like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, complete destruction of those organizations, I would do it. Like that's just, and maybe that's like, no, I don't think so, because like the Libertarian Party is based off the non-aggression principle, right? As long as you aren't hurting somebody, you're free to use your life the way that you see fit without government interference, because the government is the greatest aggressor that we face. The government, organized the way it is the aggressor, and they're completely integrated with corporations like Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Raytheon to keep these continual wars going. Like, and the corporations being integrated with the politicians literally means fascism. That's exactly what fascism is. And so if I had the chance to just be like complete destruction of those corporations, it would be at the defense of humanity, because they're using their power and their money to be the aggressors. We would be protecting people. That doesn't make me somebody that's that just makes me human. That makes me like, exercise the need. I feel compelled to protect the people around me. And that's how you would do it, is by getting the corporations out of the United States government. That's one step. But also we'd have to fight the mentality that allowed them to get there in the first place, right? So that's another whole episode. But
that's another spot where I'm sure, Mark, our ideals do intersect with talking about eliminating corporate dollars out of the government and things like that. And just, you can see where they donate to both parties. The corporations like Target and Cargill or whatever, right? All these big corporations that have influence in agriculture and whatever retail markets, they're donating to both parties. They're donating to the whole Congress, and it doesn't even matter what party.
Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, one, just speaking to you guys before we got on, I could tell, like, listen, you don't run in the Libertarian Party if you're like in politics to be a careerist politician, right? Like there's no money in running in the third party. So right off the bat, I know I actually care about the welfare of others, and that immediately separates you from like 90% of federal politics. And then two, fine details between how you or I would set up a healthcare system, between how you and I would run an education system. But the fact of the matter is, those details currently don't matter. Because what matters is right now we're all pushing in the same direction. Because the fight number one for any of us to be able to actually have our ideas heard by the government, the first thing we have to do is we need to build a government that listens to regular people and doesn't listen to their corporate owners. We need to eliminate, big dark from our system. And we need a voting system. I would vote for ranked choice voting every way. I would fight for proportional representation every step of the way, because I think that would make the government, until we win that fight, until we win the fight of listening to people. But frankly, it doesn't matter what our different ideas on education or healthcare is. And there's enough point of agreement anyway between us with anti-war policy, dark money in our politics, that, help us to have solidarity with one another, and to help each other's voices.
Yeah, I think when we can agree on this one or two issues, and then when you get the group together, I've heard you get one person, you could have 100 IQ. The more people, it divides that by that ratio of number. You know what I mean? The more folks you get together, the lower IQ that group is going to have. You know what I'm saying? The group think does not equate to good ideas. The bureaucracy is one of my favorite words to trash on, right? I hate this group think stuff, where I'd rather decentralize a lot of things and just leave it up to the individuals and own their own property and manage their own thing and raise their family and their food and things like that, and voluntary exchange. And yeah, that sounds like great utopia. And I know that's not happening in my lifetime, but I do wonder how we can create these coalitions. And I really do think that, a lot of folks hate on me for liking term limits, but I do want to just flip the script. And I think just new young folks like yourself, Mark, and the three of us, we could all do things where maybe we're ignorant to the way the establishment works, but that's probably a good thing. Like, we have ideas of how this should work, and we can get other ideas from where other folks that have been in the BS game for however long. You can learn a few things from that, but I think we do need to start carving a new path.
Yeah.
We need to wrap up, or what? You need to give us your social medias and stuff.
Yeah, where can people find you?
So you can find me. I am Ives for Congress 2024 on Instagram. My website is ivesforcongress.com. If you Google Ives for Congress, you'll find Facebook, Ives for Congress, @gmail.com. Most things are Ives for Congress, but ivesforcongress.com is a good starting point.
All right, TJ, where can people find you at?
TJforliberty.com and TJ_Hawthorne44B. Robbie Bernstein gave me shit for my Twitter handle, but it's whatever. My Twitter got hacked. Thanks, SWAC fan and Sarah, for hanging out. If you guys are still there, thanks for the comments and stuff. That was awesome. I don't know how to really react to the comments. I don't know exactly where they're coming from. And I'm not exactly who SWAC fan is. I probably do know them, but I don't know because of their name. But
you should come,
I appreciate SWAC fans' engagement. Shout out to SWAC fan.
I wanted to engage. I like reading the comments. They're definitely red there. We can see them. It's just hard to react while we're digging in.
I'll
so where are we
respond
going to
to
see you this
SWAC
weekend?
fans said.
Okay.
There wasn't a moment for me to respond to one thing SWAC fan said. As black man, no, the Dixiecrats are the ones backing the K. I assure you, the reason the Dixiecrat Party split from the Democratic Party in the 20th century is because they began to back civil rights. So that is the reason because this is going back to when I said I admire the mid-century Democratic Party. We're talking R to LBJ. So that is why there was
CIA
an official Dixiecrat Party. They split from the Democrats because of racial issues. But anyway, there's your response, SWAC fan. You might not like it, but hey, there it is.
So,
where can we see you this weekend, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm going to be in a couple of places this weekend, running for U.S. Senate against Amy Klobuchar. If you dislike the establishment as much as I do, which is a lot, you'd have to. I mean, it's not a competition, but it could be. I'm going to be at the Rondo Block Party in St. Paul on Saturday. On Friday, so the day before, I actually have a debate that I'm going to be in at the St. Paul Capitol building in the Rotunda. So, Mark, if you're not busy, wouldn't mind having, a little bit in the crowd.
I'll be there.
Coming to see, I got invited. The other people that are going to be there are all GOP candidates, also for U.S. Senate. I don't believe any of the establishment picks from the GOP have decided that they are also going to be that debate. No, they're not going to be there. Oh. I don't know. Maybe they think they've got it in the bag, but so they're not going to attend as far as I know. I mean, maybe they will, but as of right now,
DC's doing some good work.
Yeah. And you can find me on Facebook. It's Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate. Website is whiting4 senate.us. And, I'm all about trying to help the little guy, the working class people. So as we talked about that's a lot, helping people like myself. And I've been dealing with car problems all day. And it's just made me more mad at everything that's going on in the country and the inflation and having to decide, am I going to get parts for my truck or am I going to go buy groceries? Which one's more important right now? So that's kind of what I've been dealing with today. And anyways, I'm ready to take the whole establishment down. So if you're interested and you want to join me, that's the goal. And I'm really bad at saying no and knowing when to stop. So I'm probably in this for the long haul. And go and help me troll Amy Klobuchar on social media. It's a lot of fun.
One more thing. Yes. Yeah. Trolling Amy Klobuchar. And I'll be at the Washington County Fair. I'm going to go to that debate at the Capitol Friday, and then I'll be at Washington County Fair Friday night, Saturday, all day.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to get to the fair, but the Libertarian Party does have a booth at the Washington County Fair. And then the next weekend, we have a booth at the Beltrami County Fair, which is my stomping grounds. So anyways, lpmn.org if you want to find out more information about the party or become a member. And then you can find Marc Ives. And actually, I was able to find all your information just Googling Marc Ives DFL, Minnesota. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. Beautiful. And if you have questions, if you just want to get on and talk and grill us, reach out. Let me know. I'm ready to create tons of content. So, we're game, but it's been fun. And you have any parting words, Mark?
I want to thank you guys for having me on. I truly believe our country is at a fork in the road, and I think every man, woman, and child of good conscience needs to band together to agree that we need a new Congress and we need new people in government, because this 40-year experiment of corporate rule has not gone well. Yeah, so I'm super glad that you guys brought me on. I believe in solidarity between people from all different walks of life, different parties, whatever. You know, if I find a Republican that's anti-war, boom, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great night, y'all. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.